Hello, everyone. Welcome to LexTalk World Talk Show presented by ClickAway Creators. Today, we have Mr. Sean Janse van Rensburg. I did a great job in pronouncing that with us today. And Sean holds an LLM in Mercantile Law in 2020. And Sean was admitted as an attorney of the High Court of South Africa in 2020 as well and joined Markram Incorporated shortly thereafter. Later, Markram changed its name to TMJ Attorneys Inc. Sean has been involved in numerous arbitrations and mediations. His major area of expertise involves insolvency law, competition law, IP law, that is intellectual property, construction law, and company law. He recently opened his own law firm as well. So we're going to talk about all of it. But without further ado, before we do all of that, let me introduce you to the man himself. Hi, Sean. How are you doing?
Well, thanks yourself, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Great. It's our pleasure to have you on the show. And once again, welcome to the show. As I said, I'll try my level best to cover things about you in my little words. But I want to understand, I want to start the conversation by sort of asking you, why law? Why being a lawyer, not something else?
Sure. So I suppose we have to go back to when I was probably about 6 years old. And my sister and I always used to sort of, play these games when we were alone and trying to entertain ourselves. And one of the games that we would always play was lawyer, and dictating and presiding over ridiculous matters, as to who spilled the sugar and who ate all the cake or whatnot, and we would hold a whole court case with one another. And I would always be the presiding officer in such determinations. And I suppose from there, that's where my love for the law grew over the years. While I was in school, I participated in the National Schools Moot Court competition. And through that whole process, I was obviously sort of introduced to the world of law, or at least a small part of the world of law. And my love for the law just grew from there. Obviously, being in university, I continued with the moot court competitions. I was part of the executive committee at the University of Pretoria, specifically of the Moot Court Society, and obviously I was able, through that process and through that interaction, I was able to interact with judges from all over the country and from legal practitioners and senior advocates from all over the country. And during that whole process, I realized this is where I'm meant to be and this is what I'm meant to do.
That's a wonderful answer. I mean, going back to your childhood seems really wonderful. Sean, I also mentioned about the law firm. So if you could talk about that, and we'll go ahead and understand more about your career. But if you can tell us about more of your law firm and how you decided to open your own law firm.
Sure. So I was at my previous firm, TMJ Attorneys, which was mentioned earlier on. I was made a director and named partner in July of 2021. And through that process, I was able to learn, how one operates a law firm. You're looking at from the accounting perspective to handling clients, to dealing with your own, legal matters and ensuring that everything is kept up to date, dealing with staff, dealing with the public at large, and so forth. And through that, I realized, well, I've now got this sort of background and foundation, and then decided to start my own law firm with my partner, JV Kinsella, who I was working at the firm with. And we decided, well, let's go out and do this. We're more than capable. We've got the necessary client base that is needed to support ourselves, which is probably the starting points in opening your law firm. Do you have the clients? And once you've got the clients, you can then sort of grow from there and move on from there. And I was lucky enough, or blessed enough rather, to have been able to take all the clients over with me to the new law firm. I'd spoken to them and said, listen, I intend to go on this new venture and I'd love to bring you along with me. And let's say 99.9% of the clients said that they would be more than happy to come with me, as there was a personal relationship with me and not so much with the firm. which I've always been a proponent of. And I believe that that's probably one of the most important things. And it's one of the things that we foster in our law firm, is ensuring that there's always a personal relationship with the clients. Sometimes you get so caught up in the business aspect of it that you actually forget to ask, how are you doing? How are your kids doing? How's your wife doing? How's your husband doing? Whatever the case may be. And we've seen that work for us. It's the people have stayed because of that relationship that has been fostered, personal relationship that has been fostered over the years.
That's beautiful, and I congratulate you and wish you the good luck for the law firm. Moving
Thanks.
forward from here, we also wanted to, I personally actually wanted to understand. I'm always excited when I talk to a lawyer, and of course, of your stature, to sort of understand their complex legal issues. I understand that every legal issue is complex in its own way, in its own unique way, rather. But still, I believe that's a difficult question for you, but I'm still going to put it to you. If you can tell us about a complex legal issue you worked upon recently or in your past, and describe the complexity around it, and of course, how you really approached it.
I suppose one of the most complex issues, and it's in fact one of the matters that I'm still currently dealing with, in South African law, we've got let's call it a mixed basket of law, in the sense that we've got various sources of where we obtain our law. So we've got the common law, we've got legislation, we've got case law, but we've also got customary law. And one of the cases that I'm currently dealing with involves the Constitution, it involves legislative provisions, but it also involves customary law. Now, because of the way that customary law operates in South Africa, many times that tends to clash with the necessary or relevant legislative provisions, as well as the constitutional provisions. So this case specifically that I'm dealing with deals with our clients is a chief in one of the chiefdoms in the Northwest Province. And his matter, he's currently fighting as to whether or not he's entitled to that chiefdom. Now there's a conflict between him and another party, and unfortunately the other party has let's call it political ties with high people in high places, if we can call it that. So we've because of that sort of relationship that our opponent has, we've also found that there's now conflict in the courts that we're dealing with, that specific court that we're in. There seems to be a lot of political influence and whatnot. So we currently are approaching the Supreme Court of Appeal in South Africa to have that particular matter referred from that court to another court. Now, the complexity behind it is that the Constitution expressly dictates, and the relevant legislative provisions dictate, that the court has to have jurisdiction before it can hear a matter. Now, jurisdiction is ordinarily found on where the cause of action arose, or where the respondent or defendant ordinarily resides or is domiciled. There are other ways to find jurisdiction by attachment and whatnot, but in this particular matter, those are the only two aspects in which jurisdiction would be found. Now, all of which, let's rather put it, fall within this particular court, which we obviously draw issue with in the manner that it's being dealt with. So we're in the process of taking the matter to the Supreme Court of Appeal and requesting that court that the Supreme Court allow for another court within a different provincial jurisdiction, to preside over that matter. Now, it's complex in the sense that the effect and the executability of that order would be in a different province in which the order that we are seeking is being granted. I haven't seen such an order being granted in our law, or at least in our post-democratic era up until now. And I do believe that it is going to set a very interesting precedent, dependent on which way the court tends to lean. So we obviously hopeful with the case. We do believe that we make out a very good, both a constitutional argument as well as a legislative argument, to say that the law does allow for us to refer the matter from this court to another court, notwithstanding the issue of the jurisdiction that the courts do have.
Well, good luck, and my good wishes are with you and me, and not just me, but our viewers. Hope we can hear a good news on this in our next show when we have you again.
Absolutely.
this has been. We are going good for the session. For now, I also want to have your take on a few things which we generally regularly talk to lawyers, especially when it comes to different parts of the world. Uh, so you see, in pandemic, we saw cases, and I mean rather the courts begin moving towards more remote proceedings and availability, and this happened across the globe. What do you think? Is this sustainable and a possible way to increase the access to justice? What's your opinion on this?
No, absolutely. It's definitely sustainable. And I think it's something that we probably should have done a long time ago, even before the pandemic. And the reason I say that is because we were sort of rushed, as soon as the pandemic hit South Africa specifically, we were sort of, we had just started what we call case lines, which is our online court platform. The problem, however, in South Africa was that there were only two courts that actually implemented case lines at that stage, and that was the Pretoria High Court and the Johannesburg High Court. The other high courts in South Africa had not implemented this system as of yet. So it definitely assisted in allowing the relevant attorneys firms to continue litigating on behalf of their clients. There were a few glitches, as one would expect with new platforms of this nature, but notwithstanding the glitches, we were still able to proceed with online court platforms. The papers would be filed electronically, the matters would be heard electronically via Microsoft Teams, and matters would obviously be able to go on. And in fact, we've retained that system up until now. We've retained that virtual hearings of matters. We've retained case lines. In fact, we've also implemented a new system of courts online, which allows for parties to issue their papers electronically, allowing parties to file their papers electronically, and to invite the relevant parties to the platform so that all the parties can have access to the matter simultaneously. And you also informed immediately if there is a change to the electronic bundle or the court bundle, which I believe is probably one of the best things that could have come out of COVID, notwithstanding all the other damage that it has done. So we're on the right track. I do believe that it's something that we should have done a long time ago, but at least we are here now. And I do foresee it just growing better and better as time goes on. And my hope is that eventually the system will be implemented in all the courts in South Africa, and not only the two major high courts in the country.
I mean, that's very, very beautifully put. In my side of the world, I'm from India. We also, when pandemic came, it brought a lot of destruction along with it, but ironically brought a lot of positive disruption with it when it comes to legal technology and court begin proceeding towards the remote availability. My next question is sort of related to this, Sean. Current legal systems thrive. How would you rate that in terms of encouraging access to justice again? And if there's too much gap in it, is there a tangible way or tangible moment in closing that?
So in terms of technology, in a third world country, I think it's very difficult to close that gap. And the reason I say that is obviously specifically if you look at now court case lines and court online, you would need access to internet in order to access those papers, which the majority of South Africans unfortunately don't have, considering that they fall below the breadline. There's a massive discrepancy between the poor and the rich in South Africa, and in fact the poor and the middle class. We've got an exponentially large lower class than what we do a middle class and upper class in South Africa. The courts have tried to somehow attend to that, and they say, okay, well then come to courts and we will then give you access to the internet, we'll give you access to a computer so that you can still access the papers. The problem with that, however, is that it would still require somebody to get in a taxi, pay for a taxi, come to court, pay for a taxi to get back home, which, could end up costing anywhere from, say, 150 to 200 Rand, maybe even 300 Rand, depending on how far away they are from the court. Now, considering if you're looking at somebody that only earns 2,500, 3,000 Rand a month, spending 300 Rand on transport to attend a hearing where you may or may not get the requisite relief that you are seeking, doesn't really take the matter any further, and it doesn't necessarily assist the party any further. Notwithstanding the legal costs that sometimes it takes, for somebody to brief an attorney. Not everybody has access to that, considering the sort of the financial implications that has. And in one way, South Africa has tried to address this by bringing, we've got legal aid, and then we've also got some of the universities in the country have law clinics. But what they do is they apply the means test. So they obviously look at what your income is, how many assets you have. You need to make a full financial disclosure to either legal aid or the law clinic. And dependent on what the outcome of that test is, on the investigation of the information that has been given will determine whether or not you are granted legal aid and free legal representation. Now, unfortunately, again, we sit with a situation where there are many South Africans that do in fact qualify, but we also have many South Africans that do not qualify, as they fall just out of the parameters of the means test. And the means test is not very high. If I recall correctly, the last amount, I think we're looking at anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 Rand, monthly income, which is not a lot of money considering everything else that you need to be spending your finances on. And many people that are earning, say 12,000, 13,000, 15,000 Rand a month, those people fall out of that means test, but they still don't have the necessary finances in order to afford an attorney. And by virtue of that, they then do not have access to justice. So the gap, there's an attempt to close the gap, but that gap is extremely difficult to close, looking at the socioeconomic circumstances that South Africans are faced with. The government has tried to intervene in terms of the Legal Practice Act, which governs legal practitioners in South Africa. And that act has now incorporated pro bono hours, which attorneys and advocates need to implement and incorporate into their practice. If I'm not mistaken, the sort of draft bill was 40 hours a month that need to be assigned to pro bono work, which I do believe will assist greatly, to those people that cannot afford legal aid, or rather do not fall within the confines of the means test to succeed in getting legal aid or pro bono work from the law clinics. So this will, I think, further assist in closing that gap, and hopefully we can reach a stage in the next however many years where every South African has equal access to justice, and we can move on from there.
I mean, that was a beautiful answer. That was a beautiful way ironically, a beautiful way to look at it. I guess that is something that has not happened in my side of the world, because I'm not sure whether you're aware of it, but India has the cheapest internet and the best internet around the globe. So we have a lot access to some of the positive disruptions that are coming with, which is somewhere associated to technology. To go deeper into technology, I believe now almost every lawyer, and you're a lawyer of my generation, our generation, where disruptions are not waiting for a decade to come. They are coming in every year, and rather I should say every 6 months now. Legal era, we are standing in the middle of the legal technology era. In this era, what are the most commonly used tools for you or by a law firm?
Look, I think stock standard tools is a laptop and a good internet connection. That's your starting points. Without those two tools, it's very difficult to run a successful legal practice. And we've seen that now so more than ever. Also the requisite, just basic understanding of how to utilize a laptop, typing, how to send an email, receive an email. I've seen many of the older attorneys, I'm talking, people that have been in practice for the last 40, 50 years, they were not given that, or let's rather say that they did not have that technology available to them at that stage. And I found that many of the attorneys, not too many, but some of them have actually refused to accept technology as a benefit to their practice and continue to rely on secretaries and typists and article clerks to do the necessary typing and sending of emails and whatnot in order to run the practice. And I think that's short-sighted, and I think it's detrimental to one's practice as a whole. You need to have a good grasp of technology to be able to fully run a practice. One of the other tools that we also utilize is with respect to our bookkeeping. We use a program called LexPro, and it's a fantastic tool in order to record how much time you're spending on your matters. Time is money. All that we as attorneys have to sell is time, and notwithstanding obviously our sort of intellect to a certain degree as well, but it's time. At the end of the day, it's time that we sell. So this program is fantastic in being able to record, you can set what your hourly rate is for a particular matter. You can record how much time you spent. You can record what your disbursements are in respect to that matter, how many phone calls you made, what emails you've attended to, how much time you spent on drafting certain papers and whatnot. And at the end of the day, all you have to do is type in that file number. You obviously allocate a particular file number or reference number, type that into the system, and it pulls up a statement for you at the end of the month, which you can then obviously dispatch to the clients. And that's also a fantastic tool that we've been able to utilize. Other systems that have also, I think, revolutionized the legal practice is things such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Gone are the days where clients have to travel, you book out a boardroom, or you sit in a boardroom, you sit for 10 minutes discussing the actual legal matter, and another 50, 60 minutes just talking about the birds and the bees and how the weather is and what's happening in each other's lives. And you end up billing the client for, that 60 or 70 minutes that you're spending on the matter. Whereas Teams has allowed it to become a lot more productive, Teams and Zoom. You get onto the platform, you discuss the matter at hand, and you end the meeting. People tend to refrain from speaking about irrelevant aspects, and I think that's another important and beneficial aspect that Zoom and Teams has brought to us. Speaking as an attorney that obviously says that time is money, the more time you spend on a matter, the more money you can charge, but you've also got to look at it in terms of productivity as a whole. Let's rather spend 20 minutes on a meeting, let's get to the point, and then I can rather spend more time in actually working on the matter, preparing the papers, doing the requisite research in order to come up with the best solution possible. So overall, I think your biggest, excuse me, the most important aspects when it comes to running, or technological aspects that it comes to when running a firm, is a laptop, obviously a printer. We unfortunately have not been able to escape being able to print pages and hundreds of pages of bundles. So it's a laptop, printer, and internet, and obviously a good camera. If you've got those four things, I think you can rock and roll and have a relatively good and successful practice.
No, I can sense that you got it all with you, not just the hardware, but the software as well. Great answers so far, Sean. You mentioned time is money, and let me also ask you now that question. As you said, time is money, and that is true in any profession, or rather almost every profession around the globe. And in legal, it's most of all. So how do you ensure to make the best out of your time as a lawyer, not just, again, professionally, but personally?
Mm-hmm. So what I've found is with running a law practice, there is an exponential amount of administrative work, which is not billable hours. So what I try and do as best as possible is I try and do all the admin either early in the morning before the workday starts, or in the evening when I get home. So that's when I'll look at all of the billing and you know, there's a whole array of administrative aspects that one has, but you need to try and get that out of the way so that you can focus on the actual billing work. So what I try and do for myself is I set myself between 9 to 10 hours of billable work a day. I try and break that up into 30-minute blocks. And what I do is at the end of the day, I look at how much time was spent, and I try and ensure that each block was filled with at least 25 minutes of billable work. So out of an hour's time, I've got at least 50 minutes that I know is billable work. And I make provision. 10 minutes is, you know, you walking to the printer, or you going to the bathroom, or you speaking to a colleague down the hall, or whatnot, because that does happen. But I try and not spend too much time away from that billable time, and ensure that work is done within those time parameters. As I said, LexPro is also a very good tool to ensure that you do that, because it gives you can actually draw a report and see on average how much billable time you spent on a particular matter, and how much time you could have spent, because you can also set yourself, you know, certain goals on the program. And if you don't meet those goals, it then tells you, okay, you only spent 6 out of the 8 or 9 hours, as opposed to the full time that you initially said you would do. So I think that's exceptionally important, is to just, you know, keep yourself accountable, because nobody else, especially running your own law firm, nobody's going to keep you accountable. You're your own boss, and you need to ensure that the work gets done.
That was a really wise answer, Sean. Thank you very much for answering all my questions. I actually have a lot more, but I understand, as we discussed, on time. So let's practice what we preach. So I'll not take much of your time on the session, but I make sure I promise, or you have to promise me, that you will join us for another session in this series, so that we can learn more about you, and we can learn more about the international legal fraternity. But before I let you leave the session, I want you to also guide the viewers. Where can they actually find you and your law firm?
Sure. So we are situated physically. I can tell you can find us in Pretoria, South Africa, in the Gauteng province. We're situated in the Blokrans building, which is on the corner of Linwood and Daventry Streets, Linwood Ridge, Pretoria. With regards to social media, we don't have a massive social media presence. We're only currently on LinkedIn. You can find us if you just search JV Rensburg Kinsella Inc. You will find us there, as well as on Facebook, same name, JV Rensburg Kinsella Inc. Those are our two main social media profiles. And then we've also got a website under the name and style of JV Rensburg Kinsella Inc. If you just type in www.jvrinc.co.za, you'll find us there, and all of the legal services that we provide, as well as all of our contact details.
Great. So now I guess our viewers also know where to actually physically find him and virtually find him and his law firm. So let's get started, and sort of, if you can, he also has a great helping hand. Bombard him with your questions if you have something to learn, and of course, clients can always reach back to him. This has been a great session, Sean. I really appreciate again your time, and we look forward to having a chat with you again in the future on some other trending topics in the international legal industry. So thank you very much for joining us. It was our pleasure.
Only a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. Keep up.
Hey, thank you, man. Thank you very much. And for our viewers, if you like this chat with Sean, I want you to like this video, to share this video, and click on that red button and subscribe to ClickAway Creators YouTube channel to appreciate what we do. And you have more coming in from legal industry leaders like Mr. Sean. This was Sagar for LexTalk World signing off.